internally, there may be opportunities for streamers to bundle with other streamers, not co-own, and there may be ability.
It's a lot of pressure for a single streamer, and it's why many are looking to new partnerships with old rivals. The great bundling is complicating the once straightforward streaming landscape and creating once unheard of alliances. Longtime rivals are teaming up through deals of all shapes and sizes, and we'll try to break it down for you. There are the bundles owned by a single company, so under one umbrella, like Disney, ESPN, and Hulu.
Also, like when we say decentralization, that can mean decentralization of software production. It can mean decentralization of economics. And so when I talk about, that's one sort of choice I made in the book, was to really sort of say, like, let's get specific.
Then there are licensing deals, like Netflix's earlier this year with Warner Brothers for older HBO titles. Verizon's latest deal combines two competing streaming platforms, a new frontier in telco rebundling. A new frontier in telco rebundling. Telco rebundling.
And like, how does the money flow? And that's the idea with take rates. And so what it essentially means, though, the effect of it is in a blockchain, and then I have a whole argument in the book as to why blockchains, basically the design of the blockchain constrains the take rate. And that there's a bunch of reasons why, including the fact that with a blockchain.
To recognize that kind of partnership, I mean, that word is thrown around a lot in the business, but I think it's that. I think it's this mentality by these, and I think maybe tech brought it in, that expanded it. And again, I love tech. I have a computer science degree, but yes, this thinking like, well, we came up with this thing, and you guys are just like the programming monkeys that just make it happen. Right. It's like, really? And you're all interchangeable. And they brought that kind of mentality. Into our business, right? Which is, it's mind-boggling.
To price products more efficiently, you can price a swap more efficiently. If you understand the volatility of an asset, you can potentially again change how you are dealing with those market conditions.
There are no connections, but there are interfaces and resonances and constant music.
Getting your attention.
If you pick up a newspaper, you are the content, because it only means what it means to you.
If you understand the volatility of an asset, you can potentially again change how you are dealing with those market conditions.
History.
The designer of the network is forced to commit up front to the take rates and then can't change them.
Why is it important that we want upgradable smart contracts?
And that creates a competitive dynamic.
That happens to be labor friendly. And yet we were facing opposition that was so labor unfriendly, so tone deaf.
Where people can sort of shop around, and empirically, I have a few charts in the book, like the take rates in for example, Ethereum is sub 1%, and all the kind of common blockchain networks are very, very low empirically as well. And so that's very important from from like if you build a social network, like we're investors in one called Farcaster, which is an emerging social network.
Cannot change the business model as much as it has changed and not expect the contract to change too.
So why is it important that we want upgradable smart contracts?
Where for the end user, it feels like a kind of like a typical social network like Twitter, but a very important difference is if you build an audience there and you want to, put up advertising or sell them a subscription or do whatever you want, you get the money.
Very rarely are things designed and implemented perfectly the first time. Traditional software is updated for a variety of reasons, including bug fixes, adding new features, and performance improvements. If you've ever owned any computer ever, you know what I'm talking about. And just like a proxy server sits in between a user and the server they want to communicate with, a proxy contract sits in between a user and the smart contract. Why is it important that we want ungettable smart contract they want to talk to. It can forward transactions to another smart contract. So in this diagram we have
Andrew Schultz, HEZI, and Andrew Schultz thoughts on the Hollywood strike. 1. The real issue is that actors and writers want fair residual payments from the streamers. In order to define what is fair, the streamers will need to share how many people are actually watching their shows, and here lies the problem.
It's also part of our cost containment initiative. You know, spending less on what we make and making less.
Please note, for maximum picture quality, it may be necessary to adjust the tracking control on your VCR.
And making less.
Now, of course, it used to be that some of that stuff would then go to Netflix and you'd make a lot of money from selling it in different distribution channels. Now it all just goes to Disney Plus. Do you ever think about how much money...
We shouldn't have done that?
No. How much money...
We shouldn't have done that?
No.
If you understand the volatility of an asset, you can...
But then something happens.
If you understand the volatility of an asset, you can...
But then something happens.
Begins to study the way it works, and he sees that some things go down.
And, you know, casting his pearls before swings.
One possibility is that we do some licensing. I'm not going to rule that out.
You won't?
No.
Because it doesn't feel as though that's the strategy any longer.
I kind of like that name. It's identifiable.
You get all the money, right? And that's just a dramatic shift. That's really like $150 billion a year in current social networking revenue that you sort of like, I think of it like a train track. You can reroute it back to the users. In a lot of ways, the economic argument is like, I think a lot of people focus on things like shadow banning and like these sort of obvious effects of having a centralized operator like Elon Musk buying Twitter. Now, you know, the rules have changed around freedom of speech and who gets banned. But really the economic effects in my mind are some of the most consequential. It's also what creates the opportunity, because I think, you know, historically, a lot of opportunities for new businesses on the internet have been ones where you take an existing high margin business. You know, your margin is my opportunity, Jeff Bezos would say. In the same rate, like your take rate is my opportunity. The fact that you can, this is also what makes me bullish on these networks succeeding, is if you can go to these creative people and say, hey, do you want all the money instead of none of the money? Like that's a pretty powerful proposition.
I kind of like that name. It's identifiable.
One possibility. One possibility.
And now, Deep Thoughts by Jack Handy.
One possibility.
Up, everybody.
We just have to start the song right now.
Internet
Sorry,
was
1, 2,
fun
3,
while
4.
it lasted, but AI-generated models.
Verizon announced a bundle deal for the ad tiers of both Netflix and Max for $10 a month. That's a 40% discount compared to their standard prices.
Even retailers are trying to break in. Instacart is bundling Peacock, Walmart with Paramount. Even two competing platforms may be getting together. Apple and Paramount in talks reportedly to bundle into a cheaper package, according to the Wall Street Journal. The two have among the highest churn rates in the industry.
Apple TV Plus and Paramount Plus both have more than 7% churn. That's ahead of the industry average of 5.7%.
And they could use the help with their content.
Both of them have relatively less new content specifically for streaming than some of the other services, obviously like Netflix and